We'll hear from the chair of the Papakura Local Board, Brent Catchpole, together with Richard Knott, who is work into the Papakura Metropolitan Centre plan. Welcome, Brent. Welcome, Richard. In your hands, Brent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to come before you and put a concept plan that is perhaps not as flashy and pie in the sky as the one we've just seen. However, I just our concept is probably more real and down to earth, and looks at the way Papakura can achieve the metropolitan status that it has been accredited with in the Auckland Plan. Papakura Local Board formed the Commercial Projects Group to look at this concept and have a look at ways we can achieve the metropolitan centre status. I engaged Lee Orton. Many of you will know Lee from the Manukau City Council days, where he was CEO, and he recommended Richard Knott as a town planner to help us with that concept. We've since had an opportunity to present the concept in front of the Minister of Housing and Transport, the Honourable Phil Twyford. He was incredibly impressed by it, so much so that he came up to me Saturday before last at the Kiwi Build opening to say what a great plan it was. His advisors in the transport side of things were so impressed with it that they continued to refer to it during the presentation of the corridor that puts Papakura at a central hub as part of that corridor, and he talked of the plan. It's also mentioned on the front page of that presentation as well. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to Richard to present the concept. You've got it on screens. You've all had an opportunity to have a look through it. We'll work through this as quick as we can and leave some time for questioning at the end. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone, Chairman. My name's Richard Knott. I'm an urban designer, heritage specialist and planner, and I live and work in Papakura. So this has been a great project for me to be part of and to take forward on behalf of the board and the Commercial Projects Group. What I've got on screen is actually the report, which I think you've actually been circulated a copy of, so I won't dwell on the words in there, but I'll describe in part the process we went through and then talk about some of the outcomes we were looking to achieve. And so really the most important thing, I suppose, is that the town centre is really at the heart of the local board plan, and all of the aspirations of the local board plan can be achieved in the town centre effectively. So moving forward, working as part of the Commercial Projects Group, we developed a vision for the town centre. So I workshopped a vision with the Commercial Projects Group, and that's very much about the uses that they would like to see in the town centre and the physical sort of likes and dislikes of the current centre and of other centres. And that sort of enabled me to steer the work that I took forward to ensure that I was reflecting what people wanted to see there. And I think also stepping back and remembering it is a metropolitan centre identified back in 2012 in the Auckland Plan. And I think there's a couple of significant things there really, and this is the issue of economics. And we have, going through the unitary plan, we have a 40.5 metre height limit across the whole of the metropolitan centre of Papakura, which gives us 13 stories. But what we were finding in terms of looking at what was taking place in Papakura, what was being promoted, and also having discussions with Panuku, clearly we weren't in a position where anyone was going to come along tomorrow to build a 12-storey building, and something 3 to 4 stories is probably commercially viable at the moment. Over time, we may see further developments taking place, but even so, that still fits within the realms of what the Auckland Plan expected to see in a metropolitan centre anyway. So we've moved forward on that basis, and you'll see as we move forward that we're looking at 3 to 4, 6 and 9-storey buildings across the centre. So not trying to push things too far, recognising the economic realities of developing in Papakura. I suppose the point here really is that it's a centre that's changed, and if we look at the aerial photo of the 50s and the most recent aerial photograph, we're just continuing an evolution that's already taken place. So as part of the work we've actually carried out, working with ATEED, a retail health check of the centre, understanding why people shop there and why people don't shop there, what the aspirations of shoppers is, for instance. And also, I suppose the other important thing to pick up at this stage is there is very, very limited council land ownership in Papakura town centre. So we're not dealing with something like Manukau city centre where there's significant ownership of land by the council. So moving through the sort of study and the background work, so there was a bit, you know, being from a heritage background as well as an urban design background, I've actually tried to pick out those buildings which are of heritage or I guess character significance to the centre, those buildings which people will probably leave as their lasting memory when they currently visit the centre, so those buildings that the current community value. Thinking further about the townscape and basically, I suppose, in summary, the existing town centre has got pretty good bones and something very good to work with. Thinking about gateways and where you feel that you currently enter the centre, where you may feel that you wish to encourage people to think that they're entering the centre moving forward as it expands and develops. And looking at, and there's a number of slides here which I will sort of jump through, but a number of issues around traffic and movement. And I suppose the great thing we have is that it's effectively a heavy vehicle bypass already of the main street on Great South Road. Heavy vehicles don't have to go through the main centre. So that's a real positive. It opens up great opportunities for us to look at environmental improvements in the centre. But we do actually have strong east-west networks through the centre, which are very limited as to where you can get over the railway line. And the railway line and the motorway both provide significant barriers to movement. And this is just looking at that in a bit more detail. The other issue we have is there seems to be a perception in the local community there's not a lot of car parking, but when you actually start to colour in public parking, supermarket parking and private car parking in the centre, there's an awful lot of parking. And this is an issue that's actually already been taken forward working with Auckland Transport, is to basically really understand what parking we have and actually signpost it and make it work much better than it currently does, because I think as a visitor to Papakura for the first time, you're probably parking Great South Road but not know where to go if you couldn't find a place there. So that's already moving forward. Basically, this is a summary one that picks up some other opportunities. And this is where we really move into the meat of the document, I guess, where what I've done is I've identified a series of actions, and these are sort of streetscape type actions within the centre, recognising the fact that for those of you who know Papakura by Farmers here, that's really the town centre, the town square, the opportunity to start to think about reducing traffic movements, slowing traffic movements, almost a shared space within that area and another further down. Areas where we perhaps try and promote and retain on-street parking at the entrances that either enter the town, and likewise coming into the town centre looking at movement into the town centre, both for pedestrians, cyclists and for all means of transport, basically, with the railway station being down here right on the very edge of the town centre. So the other thing I think which is really important is to actually think about linkages beyond Papakura. We've got large emerging communities, particularly at Karaka, which currently are quite poorly connected through to the centre. We're really lucky in that early next year NZTA will be putting the pedestrian and cycle bridge over the motorway from Karaka Harbour side over through to the top of Rush Green Avenue. So that actually provides a really good link for people from that direction. And it, likewise, I think we've got plenty of space on the existing bridge across the motorway, but it's just not a very particularly pleasant environment at the moment. So we're fortunate that Auckland Transport have got a Safer Communities project, which we're working with them on at the moment, and that is basically looking at mainly walking and some cycle linkages in the town centre and to the town centre. So their work is running entirely parallel to what we're doing here, so that's our opportunity to start looking at some of these linkages, particularly westwards to Karaka, but also to the existing communities in the east as part of that. So as I said, moving forward, what we've done is we've actually built I've built a 3D model of the town centre, or the metropolitan centre rather, which is shown here. And that's identified by 4 colour codes, effectively. White buildings, which you can just pick out, are those existing buildings which we don't believe we wish to encourage redevelopment of, or the owners are unlikely to redevelop. So things like the police station, the existing supermarkets, there's 3 of them in the town centre, things like that. Then we've got the sort of paler yellow area, which is the area which is probably the heart of the town centre, I suppose, and that area which has closest linkages to the train station. So that's the area which we would wish to try and encourage development of first. The blue area is metropolitan centre, but on the periphery, so something which might come medium to long term. And those red areas are those where the economics have changed entirely, and they're currently supermarket car parks. And there will be, the finance for building parking buildings to replace those and replace them with buildings. So that's really, at a high level. At a more detailed level, looking at how we can break down the existing block structure to make easier pedestrian movements, thinking about those gateway areas, thinking about open spaces that we might want to work with and enhance and create across the town centre, recognising we'd have a much higher residential community. And then moving forward, these are the images of the centre. So as I said, we effectively have buildings which are 3 to 4 stories, buildings which are 6-storey, mainly, or possibly a high number of those along that bypass route that I spoke about, and perhaps a smaller, finer grain along the main street, so that we keep the I guess, smaller town commercial feel that Papakura currently has, and also 6 to 9 in areas closer to the station, and in particularly along Shaughnessy Street, where there's high vacancy rates at the moment. So there's a series of images from different angles illustrating that. Effectively, I haven't done an up-to-date calculation of the number of residential units. I did it part way through the process, but I'd modelled probably 2/3 of the town centre. And even at this scale, we're looking at potentially 1,000 residential units coming forward, so potentially 2,000 to 2,500 people living in the centre. I think probably looking at the area now, we can probably add another third or half onto that. So we're looking at 1,500 to say 1,500 or so residential units. So that's probably taken us to heading towards 4,000 residents in the town centre, were this to be built out. I mean, we're certainly seeing it as a long-term vision, as I said. So that's it really. It's really intended to be a realistic proposition, recognising the current local property market and recognising the significance of the train station being so close to the town centre, and the opportunity that brings for really bringing some residential into the town centre and refocusing the retail in the town centre, I think, as well, and to give that a lift at the same time. So that's really a very quick rush through the report, but more than happy to answer. Well, I'll pass to Brent, and I'm certainly happy to answer questions.
Yeah, just acknowledging the fact that Papakura sits on a major hub of the rail network, and its future through the corridor to Hamilton. So that's just another point I'd like to make. Open for questions.
Thank you, Brent, and thank you, Richard, for taking us through that. Questions, members? Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, gentlemen. Great vision. I know Papakura very, very well, and it's had been in decline for a couple of decades, probably, which is kind of a shame. When you were looking at doing this, did you approach the property owners and all the developers, of which there are several in the area, to get their opinions on what's doable and what's not? Because some of the discussions I've had, they're saying anything over 3 stories doesn't stack up financially, because once you start getting into you have to use elevated special restrictions for the extra heights. It's not affordable anywhere, let alone in Papakura.
Yeah, we have a significant amount of 3-storey there, recognising that probably in the short term that's what's going to happen first. But I don't think we wanted to show the whole thing at that height, recognising this is the long-term vision. And I think as we get more people moving into the town centre, the viability will change, and we're more likely to have the opportunity to bring through taller buildings, which are shown as 6 to 9 stories. We did have discussions with Panuku, taking advice regarding that, particularly given the work that they're already putting in with Auckland Transport, looking at some sites in the centre. But as part of the Commercial Projects Group, we have the Business Association come along, and through the Business Association, I've been able to meet with some of their members and discuss this as well. So all of the signs are that we're getting that we've taken a realistic approach to this. And I certainly hear what you say, and I think you're entirely correct that at this stage in time, 3 stories is all we're going to get.
All right.
And just to answer the other part of your question, have we spoken to developers? Yes, we have, and I've got a number of meetings with the developers over the next couple of weeks.
Well, that's good news. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Newman.
I'm wondering if you could reflect any comment in relation to the business case and the benefit cost analysis of the redevelopment of, or the development of park and rides at the Papakura train station and anywhere else within the spatial priority area of which Papakura is part.
We've had, I've had meetings, a couple of meetings with the guys at AT who are taking forward that work, looking at the park and ride, and it was really positive, because initially they started looking at Papakura's park and ride, which of course we're and others are seeking to encourage them to incorporate residential into. They were looking at that without this vision in front of them, so they were just seeing that as a development within the existing centre, and I don't think had an understanding of what the aspirations for the centre were. So I think that certainly put a different light on their work.
And just the vision that was presented to us with regard to the park and ride changed considerably early this year, when it was decided by Auckland Transport that they would include an expanded bus terminal to cater for the large number of buses that start and end at the railway station, and that is now going out. It's out for a business case study, or single business case study for the combined concept with Panuku looking at the options of apartments above.
Can I just ask, so I think that the work from the commercial project team here has been absolutely amazing, and I want to thank the local board for its leadership. What are the next steps from the governing body's perspective? Where do we need to go from here?
Well, yeah. Back us and acknowledge the Auckland plan as recognition of the metropolitan centre, and really give us the support so as we can achieve this. There's a huge amount of development destined to happen south of Papakura, Drury South and beyond. So to leave Papakura in limbo until all of that's happened, I feel is basically dooming Papakura to a backwater, because if we don't have the development in the town centre ahead of time, then somebody will come up with a concept to take it elsewhere.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So just on that, you're asking us to back you. Can you just give the committee an idea of how the local board is going to back this plan itself as well? So Richard's plan identifies a number of projects within the plan. Talked about shared spaces and pedestrianisation, and we've doubled the discretionary transport capital fund to local boards, so there's opportunity there. Is the board going to look at what its priorities are within this master plan and some timeline for delivery, or has it already done that?
Well, the board is working with the Commercial Projects Group to identify the key elements that we can work with. Obviously, our funding is fairly limited, but we have to leverage off available funds that are available to develop it, and then working with developers so as we can get them to buy into it as well.
So the board will be looking at what its priorities are now in terms of projects within this master plan.
Yes, yeah, and that's
That's
with
the next stage.
that's the combined effort of the commercial projects group with the business association and the local board, all working now through this plan. We only signed it off last month,
yeah.
October. So we're now working through that to actually identify the key elements to push forward.
Richard, did you have something to add there?
No, I mean, I think the only thing or the significant thing I would add is stepping back and looking at the Auckland plan was the fact that back in 2012 that identified Papakura as one of those centres that needed regeneration before it moved forward, or as it moved forward to a metropolitan centre. And here we are, we still haven't yet had that support to bring forward regeneration. And that's, I guess, me speaking as a local resident as much as the urban designer who's put this together. So it's been clear from the start that it needs help. And I think there's distinct projects which certainly the board could take forward, and we're working with AT as closely as we can to align their developments, but it probably needs more to kickstart it.
Okay.
And there was clearly a vision in the Auckland plan to designate Papakura as a metropolitan centre. So there's obviously that image that Auckland Council had for Papakura, and we've taken that on board and work with this plan to achieve that status and that outcome.
Great. Thank you, Brent. Councillor Newman, would you like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Newman. Councillor Sir John, would you like to second that motion? Seconded by Councillor Sir John Walker. Brent and Richard, thank you for your work. Very solid work, Richard and the team, together with the board. So moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried.
Thank you very
both.
much.
Thank you.
Moving along, members, we'll now go to the next item on the agenda. I'll just make sure that there are no extraordinary items after local board input. So we go to item 8, which is the Regional Public Transport Plan. And welcome Hamish Bunn from Auckland Transport, Andrew McGill and Stuart Naston from Auckland Transport. Hamish, you'll be introducing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, this is where we're seeking, we came to the Planning Committee to advise you that we are planning to go to public consultation on the draft 2018 Regional Public Transport Plan on November the 19th. The Regional Public Transport Plan is basically a companion piece focused on the policies and services that we intend to deliver, particularly over the next 3 years, on the public transport network. As I say, it's a companion piece essentially to the Regional Land Transport Plan, which focuses on the capital side. This gives a better idea of the public transport services and other initiatives that we're putting in place to really get the most out of our public transport network. In terms of the development of that Regional Public Transport Plan, it has been, during the course of it, we've engaged with local boards, largely through cluster meetings, but through specific meetings for those local boards who had real interest and feedback. We've engaged with mana whenua in a series of huis through the South, North and Centre, and with you yourselves in the workshop last week. So the next step, we've also spoken and taken feedback from the public transport, the bus operators themselves. So the next step for us is to go out to public consultation on the plan, and then once we've received that consultation, we would like to come back and provide you with feedback on the sort of response that we've received from the public and how we intend to address those issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamish. Members, questions at this point? Remember, we had a workshop on this, and some of the feedback is collated there on the sheet that's just been distributed. Councillor Hills?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I guess we had a lot more detail the other day, so just how it will be socialised going forth. I just want to make sure that there's a lot more detail. But the changes here, I asked for the change on the Hobsonville ferry to say Hobsonville/Beachhaven, and the Birkenhead one to say Birkenhead/Northcote. But in this, it's the note here says Hobsonville should be called Hobsonville/Beachhaven and Northcote, which is incorrect. So there's two.
Spell it properly as
I'm
well.
aware you know that, but just making sure that it's two separate services, not the other one. The other one, and you know, there's obviously been some talk and concern this week around walking and cycling, and around the changes coming, and we have been given quite a lot of certainty that it's still very important and it's going to be embedded across the whole of Auckland Transport. But I just want to make sure that it will be clearer about the first leg, last leg, and incorporating safety around not just the physical box of a train and a bus and a ferry. It's the whole journey, and that will be, you know, I'd like to see a stronger kind of point on that actually the walking, cycling and safety is crucial to allow the whole journey and the connections between those happen. So we talked about it in the workshop, but I just want to make it clear that will be kind of strongly put in here to allay any other fears as well.
Certainly, thank you, Councillor. And I apologise for that mistake with the ferry service description. We're certainly taking those comments into account. We're modifying the plan to respond to them, to all the comments that we had from councillors during the workshop session last week. And I can say that in terms of our policy approach and the things that we want to achieve as Auckland Transport, we're absolutely going ahead with the support for walking and cycling. We see that coordination for first and last leg access to the public transport network, particularly the rapid transit network, is absolutely crucial. So that will continue to proceed.
And one last is probably maybe too detailed, but on the ferries again, we had the story last week around Hobsonville Residents Association funding potentially a trial, and that I haven't had complete answers on whether that includes Beachhaven because they don't have a facility to fund that, but also on the decisions around the future of the Northcote ferry. Will this go out with the assumption that the services are running on both Northcote, but also that you showed some increases, which is fantastic, on Hobsonville/Beachhaven, but will this trial affect there's sort of two things happening at once that might give some confusion to those two services around Northcote and Beachhaven/Hobsonville around weekends and things like that.
So the intention is that both Interpeak as well as weekend services in Hobsonville will be strengthened over the next 3-year period. So that includes Beachhaven and Hobsonville, and certainly we'll go out on the assumption that Birkenhead and Northcote are still in operation as a complete service.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker? Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. So, got a few questions. Given that this regional public transport plan is covering a 10-year period, does this plan meet our requirements to reduce our level of carbon emissions in Auckland?
Yes, relative to what would occur otherwise, it will certainly assist with reducing the level of carbon emissions through increased mode share, change from private vehicles to public transport, and because this plan includes what's it called, Colin?
So as part of the C40 climate change group, we've, through Mayor Goff, we've committed to buying only low emission buses from 2025 onwards, which is included in this plan.
And particularly, does the plan allow for a radical shift to electric vehicles, which will require plug-in stations and so on, as other cities have?
This is the public transport plan, so it doesn't deal with how we'll address the shift to electric vehicles in terms of the private vehicle fleet. But certainly, as Colin said, as part of the low emissions bus roadmap, I've remembered the name, we intend to electrify the bus fleet. So that will lead to emissions reductions and also, removal of diesel fumes and such in the CBD over time as that electrified bus fleet rolls out.
So does public transport include park and rides?
Yes, certainly.
So do we have a dramatic escalation in plug-in facilities at the park and rides for a shift to electric vehicles?
Not at this stage, not through this plan. We're currently working on our electric vehicle plan. So looking at the ways that we as Auckland Transport and then more widely other agencies can facilitate the uptake of electric vehicles.
And part of the reason I asked that question is the announced intention on the part of any number of motor vehicle manufacturers to cease production of internal combustion engines over time. So it's coming.
Certainly, and our expectation is that, sorry, I'm getting distracted, that a lot of people will most likely charge at home. So we need to think carefully about the extent of charging facilities that we put in into the public realm.
So there isn't any funding at this point in this 10-year plan. Okay, that's fine. The other question I've got is just around the impact that this regional transport plan will have on road congestion. Given that Auckland Transport knows that the number of vehicles travelled on our roads in Auckland is increasing at the same rate as population, and that our present inroads into getting a modal shift haven't worked adequately in that respect. Is this plan going to shift that? Is it going to enable us to make that change that we need, or will we still be continuing to have the ratio that we've got now?
So I suppose I should speak to this plan in the context of the overall regional land transport plan and the ATAP capital program that was signalled earlier this year. And I can say that the results of that indicate that we will certainly have a mode change towards public transport, particularly during the AM peak, but also throughout the day. And those modelling results indicate that congestion, in terms of the time spent in congestion, remains relatively steady. So from that perspective, we still continue to see increase in demand for private vehicle travel, and we'll see that because our population is continuing to grow. But the modelling evidence indicates that we're able to absorb a lot of that during the peak period and hold congestion relatively steady. Not to say that it's not, at a regional average level. So there'll be places where it gets worse and some places where it's not so bad.
And my last question is there any proposal in this 10-year plan for weekend services at Gulf Harbour and Hobsonville?
Yes.
Ferries?
The answer is yes, over the 10 years. Over the 3 years, certainly Hobsonville. I would have to check exactly what we have for Gulf Harbour within 3 years.
There is a slide in the presentation that we had that referred to that question and ferry services. Councillor Casey, please.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry I missed the workshop, so this is just a new question, and I'll understand if you can't answer it right now, but I'd love to get an answer. I've just come back from Holland and Scotland, where I took massive amount of pictures of dogs on planes, ferries, buses and trains. What? And I wondered, I was expecting to come back to find the new rules for allowing dogs on public transport. I might add that the dogs on said public transport were on leash and under the supervision of their owners and not contained in little boxes. So my question really is, where are we at? I thought it was coming in October. I asked for it before I went away, it wasn't ready. Can you please expedite it? That is the new rules for the carriage of pets on public transport in Auckland, because it kind of fits into quite a few of your goals for the next 10 years, such as improving customer access to public transport.
Thank you. We'll go away and find where that was at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Henry.
Just congratulate you on your mana whenua engagement. But there's a bit missing, which is Mātai Waka engagement. And I represent Mātai Waka, Māori urban communities. We got two of the biggest, I suppose, urban organisation, Manukau and Waipareta. Can you at least think of engaging with those two organisations? And I suppose the question about I suppose light rail. There's a sort of proposal out there that there's light rail from sort of Botany to the airport, but nothing from Botany to the other side to Pakuranga. So you can have a look at that along the way. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Newman.
Yeah, we're meeting tomorrow, but since we're here in this public forum now, does the draft RPTP foreshadow accelerated transformation and mode share via the rollout of new contracted commuter bus services to complement the bus priority corridor in the south? Do we have the headroom to do that, or do we not have the financial headroom in terms of the OPEX budget to do that? Because I've been told two answers to that questions which contradict each other in the past week. So could you just clarify that for me?
Within the current 2 years of funding, no, we don't have headroom to substantially increase services there. However, within the 10-year plan, yes.
What part of the 10-year plan, if not the first 2 years?
I think it's in the year 4 to 6 of the plan.
That's not really this 3-year draft RPTP, is it?
So the RPTP covers 10 years, 3 years in detail, and 10 years with as a plan.
Okay, we'll talk tomorrow.
Thank you. And just a reminder on public transport OPEX, we'll be having a workshop with Auckland Transport, I think in February, specifically discussing the headwind that we're facing on OPEX.
Yeah.
Critical work. So, Councillor Watson, please.
Thank you. Just another quick one on the ferries and the change that's been made there to the current frequencies. In the instances that were pointed out at the workshop, they were one service short, I think, at a couple of locations for 2018. So I'm assuming that the next 3 years remains the same. It would be nice if the change was the ferry service getting put on to bring it up to what was envisaged. I'm assuming that's not the case. But there is no change to what is envisaged then over the next 3 years. That's the substance of the changes, I should say.
Other than the Hobsonville increases as discussed, essentially the inner harbour services remain unchanged. Gulf Harbour, I would have to check on weekend services. I can't quite remember which year it falls in.
Okay, so there was the 30-minute frequency at peak time and then moving out to weekend ferries. So I guess what I'm asking, you haven't then scaled back what we were anticipating over the next 3 years as a consequence of it not being up to the 2018 goal?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Member Namani.
Kia ora. This is just more a question of process, because I'm just not no questions around the fact that you've consulted with mana whenua, but I'm interested in, and apologies I didn't attend the council workshop, but you've come back with issues that were raised at the workshop and responses, and how that's been incorporated into the plan. but you note that you've been talking to mana whenua 2007, 2018, and that whatever input they've provided will come later. Like, I'm assuming that's not the case. I'm assuming issues that they've raised in those previous 2 years have been incorporated into the current plan, and any additional will be incorporated. That's what's intended?
Yeah, that's quite correct.
Right, thanks, I just read it a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. First of all, thank you for including the hop card in the revised plan as per feedback at the workshop. My query, though, is when I read what you've written about that, because one of the points I made is that you seem to be reducing the amount of places that you can top up your hop card, especially around secondary schools and that. And I didn't think that was a good idea. But your answer, the changes, a policy around this has now been added. What does the policy say?
The policy, so the policy in terms, just one moment, I'll bring it up.
Well, you can come back to me, but I mean, I asked, could we keep more hop card top-up options as opposed to less, because you were reducing them, and you said, yes, we'll look at that. It says yes, and then it says a policy, but I just don't understand. So while you're looking at that, I'll ask my second question, if you like. And that is, it's actually a bigger question. It's around the fact that you are going out now for public submissions from the 19th of November. And with respect, one of the big problems that Auckland Transport has is, with Aucklanders, is for them to really feel that you will listen. Are you telling or are you asking? And if you are asking, what would change your mind? So what I haven't got any coverage on is exactly what you're going to put up live, or are you handing out stuff? What will it say? What are you asking for feedback? Will people be able to see what's in my backyard? I haven't seen that coverage. I'm very nervous. I'm noting that you're going out, but I'm here to try and help you. And at the moment, I can't, something's going to go up and we're going to go out for submissions, and I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what I can say to the people of my ward or any other ward about how you can make a difference to change this or to agree with this. I don't know any of that, and that makes me a little bit nervous because I'm trying to help your relationship with Auckland to get better, but I haven't got that detail, and actually it would have been nice to kind of see what you're going to put up. And as I said, more specifically, would be nice to see what are you actually asking Aucklanders for? A helicopter endorsement of everything? A deep dive into something that's going to happen in their backyard, or I don't know what the answer to that question is. Okay, can you help me, please?
So, in terms of the material that will go out, we'll be providing the full draft plan. How long is it now, Andrew?
It's about 150 pages.
So the full detail, there'll be a summarised version of that draft plan. And we are asking for specific feedback on 3 questions in much the same way as we did during the Regional Land Transport Plan consultation. I'll get Andrew to speak to those in just a second. In terms of our ability to respond, absolutely we'll be wanting to respond to the feedback from Aucklanders as much as possible, kind of within the practical constraints that under which we operate. So that's certainly our intent.
So your 3 key questions?
So the 3 key questions are, what do you think about our 4 focus areas that we have developed as our guiding principles for the development of the plan? The second is, what do you think about the specific policies that we've developed? So we've got policies within 9 core topic areas, and then within each of those there's about 15 or 20 policies that have been written, and we're actually writing a section into the report now to highlight in particular for the public what major changes have been made to policies since 2015, so that people can see, oh yes, this is a major area of impact. And then also we've asked people if they have any other areas of concern or issue that they'd like to raise with us and provide more detailed discussion on as well.
Look, this is not the place, I suppose, now, but you see my point. This is, it's getting, no, who's going to read 150-something pages? And I understand that you've got a summary, but I suppose really if you could have it really specifically. So I know what your 4 focus areas are. So expand and enhance the rapid and frequent networks. Where are they? Are they in my backyard? Are they in somebody else's backyard? Will I benefit? It's that kind of basic, if you want Aucklanders to look at it and it means something to them, it's not going to be pages and pages long. It's going to be quite specific. And we all know that 10 years doesn't mean 10 years, it actually means 3 years. So let's hone right in to the next 3 years, what it means for them, potentially ward by ward, or at least sub-regional, north, south, east, central. And just you make it very simple for people to understand. That would be my request.
Yes, and councillor, on that, so we've got in the document a list of every single bus route, every single train line and every single ferry service, and we are detailing the changes to frequency, span of hours that are proposed over the next 3 years and then aspirationally for the next 10 years. So that level of detail is definitely in there, but we'll take your point and we'll bring that more to the surface for the consultation material so people don't have to go searching for it.
So have you already done your consultation material? It's all ready to go or not?
The consultation material is being prepared back at AT right now. So we have a team working on it right now. So they're doing the finalised sort of desktop publishing and preparation of a website, preparation of letters, collateral, that type of information right now.
And we don't get to see that before it goes live?
No.
That's all right, I'm just asking.
No, we're not. To be honest, I don't think if it was brought to us, I don't think anybody would read it.
Well, why are we asking Auckland if no one's going to read it then?
It is quite a technical document, and as it's been outlined, there's a summary document. So if people would like to read both, just send Hamish an email, and he'll make sure that you get both.
And councillor, sorry, also on your question around the hop card, I've got the policy. The policy is several pages long, and I can, if you like, I will send that to you. We will send that to you to give you that detail so that you can see the full policy around what we're proposing to do with fares, ticketing and the hop card.
Simple question, will you have more opportunities for people to top up their hop card live? Certainly around secondary school. Is that what the policy says?
I can't speak to that level of detail. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, gentlemen, again. I'd make the point that this process, Regional Public Transport Plan, I think will have more public focus this time round than usual. We live in an age of informal ATAPs, top-down promulgations of the government of the day. One government does an ATAP, and the next year a new government comes in and does something that's quite different. And so the public are aware of that, and I think there is a growing awareness of the importance of the consultation process in the statutory regional public transport plan. So my point is, thank you for giving us the feedback notifying or recording the feedback that the councillors and the mayor made at the last meeting. I would make the point that at least 2 councillors raised concerns about congestion on State Highway 16, and in light of the intensive and extensive development that's going on in the northwest. Into the plan, what was taken out in 2015, that is extension of rail services to Huapai. You saw fit not to include that in your summary, but I'm just letting you know, be aware that it's going to be on the agenda, and the public are going to be even more focused on this process than ever before. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Just a few things. One of the things that I mentioned in the workshop, Hamish, was the need to, you referred to the ferry strategy which is being worked up, and I think you will have landed the stage 2 by the time you finalise this document. Is that an accurate recollection?
Yes.
Can we have some confidence in that the ferry strategy will signal full fare integration of ferries buses and rail. At the moment, the ferry fare component, if you're travelling the network, is not integrated. That's the first point. And also, will the ferry strategy updated RLTP, public transport plan, address the exempt services which does not allow a full integration of the part of the network that the exempt ferry services, Devonport and Waiheke, travel on those routes. They aren't integrated fully into our wider network because of the exempt status. Will this stage, the ferry strategy and the public transport plan update, address that gap?
Mr. Chairman, through you, the RPTP currently has policies as to how we deal with the current one that we propose, has policies as to how we deal with exempt services. We have already had feedback on that from operators with regards to the proposed policies, which we'll have to filter through before we finalise the RPTP. But we have had draft feedback from the operator.
Yeah, look, I'm giving, I get it in the neck pretty much every week from ferry users, particularly on the Devonport ferry, where their ferry is delayed and Auckland Transport has no influence over that, almost absolutely no influence, because it is an exempt commercial cash cow service. So I would like to see in this plan, I would expect that this is the place that you signal that you're transitioning to fully contracted, integrated services right across the network. Is this not going to occur? It's one thing to hear from the operators. I'd really like you to hear from ferry passengers, which will tell you they want Auckland Transport to be influencing their service, which they currently cannot be influencing. I'll probably leave that with you because it's a question. Just in terms of first and last leg, there's a focus there. There's been some restructuring at Auckland Transport, disestablishment of about 100 plus positions in the walking and cycling team, and there's going to be a lesser number established. So can you assure us that there's nothing coming off the pedal in our focus on walking and cycling at Auckland Transport?
I suspect it's an assurance better given by the Chief Executive, but certainly from my point of view and in the context of this plan, absolutely not. We continue to see walking and cycling as an absolute integral part of what we do. It's a crucial part of making public transport work and getting more out of the catchments. We've got extensive capital investment into the walking and cycling program as part of the Regional Land Transport Plan and ATAP, and we're absolutely committed to delivering that. We've got a big task ahead of us and we need to move forward on it, so that's what we're doing.
Okay, good to hear that, Hamish. And there's a part of this plan that does look at vehicle emissions, and particularly in the city centre. Our research unit just last week announced high levels of black carbon in the Queen Street Valley, 3 times that of Canadian cities, twice that of European cities, 90% from diesel, 10% from the port. These are deadly black carbon 2.5 particulates, the ones that sit in your lungs. So we've got a situation right now which is something we have to address.
So why don't we shut Queen Street?
What is your plan, knowing if this information hasn't reached you, it should reach you very quickly. What is Auckland Transport's urgent response to the particulate counts that have been identified in the Queen Street Valley?
Well, that information hasn't necessarily reached us, but the immediate response is, as you're aware, we've electrified as part of a trial 2 of the CityLink buses, and we certainly want to move towards electrification of the full CityLink service. Colin, do you have a date on that?
Yep, so the current contract on CityLink ends in November 2020. So certainly any re-procurement of that would include electric buses.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a supplementary to that, if I may? Would you be able to do some work for the committee? Obviously, there are solutions coming up in that Queen Street Valley, and the statistics raised by the chair are very concerning. But what would be the impact, for example, of electric light rail and pedestrianisation of Queen Street? I presume those two things would have a dramatic effect, but I'd like to see the empirical evidence or estimates behind that. Would you be able to provide that for the committee?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll get the REMU data to you. Appreciate that it hasn't reached you yet, but it just came out last week, which is pretty damning, and does affect the health of Aucklanders. Any other questions, feedback, members at this stage?
Yes.
Mayor Goff?
Yeah. I notice on the chart you've shown us is that public satisfaction has increased quite dramatically over the last 5 or 6 years, and for bus services it's gone from roughly 80 to over 90. You have reorganised the 5 bus networks, and by and large that seems to have gone really well. But I notice over the weekend a concern about the impact on school bus transport. Can you give us any insight into how that reorganisation has affected people, the kids going to school? What number of people have been affected by that, and if there's any way in which we can address the concerns that some parents have raised?
So the way the network has been organised, and in accordance with our policies from 2015 right through to 2018 now, is that we provide school buses to children in zone, and particularly where it's primary and intermediate schools, we generally have dedicated school buses. Otherwise, where we have supplemented services, increased the frequency of public transport services that cater to those schools, we have not necessarily added school buses there for high school children. Furthermore, what we've done is in the past we were operating out of zone school buses, so over fairly long distances. With the connected network we have now, we don't offer all of those school services. At times we have, as a result of feedback, added some where there's significant demand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Hills.
Yeah, so one thing on the integrated fares again, should we be encouraging a whole lot of people to be submitting on the ferry issue? Because, you know, it's the last issue really. If you tag off at a train station and tag on the train, there's no extra cost. If you tag off a bus and onto the busway, there's no extra cost. If you are catching a bus to a ferry, you pay $4.50 or an increased cost for a ferry compared to the same distance in a bus, but you also pay for that bus. There's no combined price like there is for bus to bus and bus to train. I know there's a wider funding issue and policy issue, but I think we've been asking for this for 8 years when I was on the local board as well, and I just don't know how this gets fixed, and it does not, we don't have a system that's integrated when you put ferries in there.
Yep. So the ferry fare integration is in the unfunded part of our RLTP at the moment. Without reprioritising funding, it's not something we're progressing right now.
Okay, well, look, that's disappointment. I'm sure you'll get some feedback on that, but this public transport plan responds to the funding plan, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that was identified in the funding plan. Okay, that's an ongoing problem we hear from, plus the integration, because you can cross the harbour in 8 minutes for discounted hop of $4.60, I think it is now. You can go all the way to Puhonui Station on the rail for the same price. Ferry users are paying a premium fare and they don't get integrated into the network, so it's a big gap. And this is a 10-year plan, even though it's in 3-year tranches. Okay, members, I've just amended the B because it wasn't that clear. So we did give some feedback at the workshop that's been taken into account. Hamish and others, thank you for responding and adjusting a few things there. And there's, you'll be talking to our infrastructure strategy unit as well, and they will be providing feedback. And we have another look at this in the new year before it is finalised.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, and we'll continue to update the plan as much as we can to take account of your feedback and further feedback that we get. But yeah, certainly be bringing it back in early February.
Thank you, Hamish, Andrew and Colin. Appreciate that. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved, Councillor Hills. Mayor, second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Thank you, Will.
Thank you. It'll be on the 19th.
Be about some information. When will that roll out?
Okay, I'll take a note on I think we need to get abreast actually. It was, this information on the black carbon was just in a general email and it could easily be lost. So I will